Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name's Mouse,
And my name is Hayate.
and together we're the hosts of Swan Shootout Radio, a podcast dedicated to talking about niche Japanese video games. Today we have an episode that I'm pretty excited about since it's one of my favorite PlayStation 3 games. Well, it's also on the Xbox 360, but PlayStation 3 is probably the platform you want to play it on. But before that, let's just talk about what we've been up to lately.
Yep. hmm
Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So I've been playing a bunch of games since last episode, but today I will talk about one of them, which I played and finished around 2 weeks ago. The game is Ichigeki Sashu Hoi Hoi San. This game was released by Konami in the year 2003 for the PlayStation 2 and is based off a manga by Kunihiko Tanaka, who is known for his character design in the Xenogears game. I think he's also had hand in Xenosaga and Xenoblade, and I also heard that he was the original character designer for the Key the Metal Idol OVA.
Oh yeah.
I know you're familiar with.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Mhm. Anyway, so I will read a brief summary from the game because it's better than what I can sum up. So it says, in the year 20XX, insects have become immune to all pesticides. To combat the racing plague of cockroaches and other household pests, the tiny doll-like extermination androids known as Hoi Hoi-san were created. They can hunt down insects and kill them with such miniaturized weapons as minuscule machine guns and tiny combat knives. They can also be treated as dolls by dressing them up in costumes and buying accessories for them. And the main robot of the game wears a maid uniform and rabbit ears as common accessories or default accessories. So the game is a mission-based third-person shooter where you play as your Hoi Hoi-san armed with a long-range weapon and a melee-based weapon which you can use to eliminate insects. For each mission you get a rank and credits to spend based on how fast you clear the mission. You also need to make sure not to damage furniture and household items during the mission, as this will subtract off your pay. And in between missions, you can buy new weapons, you can buy ammunition and customs and accessories. Like you can buy a voice set, you can give it an Onesan voice, for example, while you do the missions. And well, now personally, I found these missions to range from mind-numbing to just plain annoying. The levels are very burdens and there isn't much variation in the environment you get to play in. Enemy patterns are uninteresting, repetitive, and very easy to deal with. They're usually just fly around or run around in circles. Boss fights are a slog. And even after getting an A rank, which is the highest rank possible in a mission, you're paid very little, so I felt that item progression to be very slow. I don't want to wait until the end of the game to buy customs, because at that point I'm just done with the game. So I can really bring myself to
Hello?
recommend this game.
Oh, sorry, you cut off for just a second.
Oh.
It's okay.
So yeah, I can really bring myself to recommend this game, although I do enjoy the general vibe and art style. The game gets points for cute factor, but that's about it. And well, I've played a bunch of games and I was thinking about maybe tonight or tomorrow start to play Final Fantasy VII, which is
Oh, really?
yeah. I'm not like, I don't have the highest expectations since I don't really like some of the most popular Final Fantasy games. But I figured that at some point I have to play some of the classics, so I might as well get around to it. And I just bought a PS2, so I want to delve a bit more into the library.
FF7 really, it's not bad. I don't think it's one of the more interesting games in the series, but at the very least, I think they made a really smart choice by having all the enemy models just use untextured polygons. They're just like flat shaded colors. And with a lot of PS1 games, they use those extremely low resolution textures, which I think don't look particularly good. But in FF7, since it's just solid colors for all the enemy models, it actually Looks really nice nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I haven't really been playing anything too interesting lately because I've been kind of busy with work and I haven't really felt like tackling anything new.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just been revisiting some classic Nintendo games, stuff like Mother 2, Super Mario World, Super Metroid, and it's been years since I played any of these, so it's a good chance now to revisit them and see if my opinion has changed at all, which for the most part it hasn't, although I think I like Super Mario World a little bit less than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I still don't like Mother 2. uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
I,
I
I,
also
I,
felt
I
it.
could go on a bit of a tirade about all the things that I don't like about that game, but I know a lot of people do like it, and that's
Yeah.
fine. We all have our own tastes. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really want to offend anyone, but yeah, I think that's just not for me.
Yeah, honestly, even if Murder's I think one of the most influential works for me personally, as a person in general,
Hmm.
um, it's pretty far apart from what I look for in RPGs these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, so even if I do replay it and enjoy it as much as I did back then, I can definitely see all of the flaws it has, and I completely understand what people who may not like it mhm,
Yeah.
think about. Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, I recently got some like special screwdrivers or like game bit things that you can use to open up your cartridges and consoles and so on. So I opened up my N64 and cleaned it out because it was like really dusty in there. And the last time I had used it, it was giving me problems. So after cleaning it, it works fine. And I also removed the cartridge tray, which prevents you from putting Japanese cartridges in it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can play Japanese games on my N64, and really looking forward to that over the next few months because I bought a bunch of Japanese
Yeah.
N64 games recently, and so that's going to be exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look
Yeah.
forward into your talks on Sharon 2 whenever you play it.
Oh yeah,
Since
yeah.
that's
I got Sharon too. I probably won't play it right away just because
mhm,
I'm more in the mood for like casual games that I haven't played in a while.
yeah, that for sure.
Um,
That's definitely my most wanted to play N64 game, but I'll wait until I get it physically at some point.
mhm. So, do you want to jump into Idol Master 2?
Sure.
So, this is a this is a game that I think it's a good time to talk about now,
Oh yeah.
since Idol Master 2 is almost 10 years old. I think it first released in like late February 2011 on the Xbox 360. And at the time when it released, it was a fairly polarizing game in the series. And I'll get into the reasons why that is, but I think although some of those criticisms were fair to some extent, I think they kind of overshadowed the strengths of the game, and its legacy has kind of been hurt by that. And so I think now that the game's a little bit older, I think it's a good time to revisit it and talk about why I think it's such a strong title and maybe deserves a reevaluation in the eyes of certain people and also some fresh perspective from new players. There's a new game coming out soon in the Idolmaster
Oh yeah.
series, Starlit Season. So a lot of people are probably having their eyes on the series right now, and so anyone who was maybe curious about Idolmaster 2 but hasn't played it yet, I think should give it a chance, and hopefully I'll be able to detail why I think it's uh, such a great game.
Have they announced a localization for the new game, or is it staying Japanese
No,
only?
so far there's some speculation that it might be localized because they're
Mm.
releasing it on Steam.
Oh yeah.
But at this time, it's region locked on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's at the very least there's a better chance of a fan translation patch
Oh,
because of it's the first game on PC.
yeah.
Um, and there's a big translation community for all the games.
Mm.
Just not actually injecting it into the game itself because that's really difficult when it's on console. So we might see that. Um, but yeah, no official translation at this time.
I see.
It's coming out in late May, I think. May 27th, they said. And they've already announced DLC, of course.
Well,
It's Namco. What
yeah.
are you gonna do?
Yeah, sometimes I forget that iDOLM STER is a Namco IP, which is, well, I find interesting since, the long history in the video game industry from Namco.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So before we get into iDOLM Master 2, I first want to give a little bit of background on the series up until that point, just to give some perspective.
Yeah.
So the first iDOLM Master game came out in 2005. It released for arcades, and it was an online competitive multiplayer idol racing sim, which sounds like just a bizarre combination of ideas. But some very smart person at Namco saw there was a market for that, and now it's a massive franchise. So good on them for for understanding the potential there. It wasn't the first idol racing sim. That was, I think, probably Tanjo debut,
Oh yeah,
an old
on the
PC98
PC98.
game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was also ported to the PC Engine, CD, and I think the Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea with the Idol Master that really differentiated it from other racing sims, from my perspective, is that there was less focus on building stats and parameters, and more focus on communicating directly with the characters and forming a personal bond that way. If you've played other racing sims like Princess Maker 2, you're probably familiar with all the different stats and parameters and time management that consumes all the game time in those. And that's present in Idolmaster to a lesser extent, but there's just fewer stats, and the way that you raise them is more simplified. And a lot of the game time is spent talking to the characters and selecting dialogue options, and then you're kind of rated based on how well you communicated with them. So like they'll be at work, let's say they're filming a commercial or something, and they've got some concerns about the way the filming is going, and they'll talk to you about it because you play as their producer, I should say. Yeah, an idol producer. And so you have to give them advice as their producer, and then it'll rank you as like perfect communication, good communication, normal, or bad. And that that affects some stuff in the game. Like I'm not going to go into the full mechanics of the arcade game.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk more about how it works in Idolmaster 2, but the idea is that it's very focused on communication, and to a lesser extent the stat building and time management. So in Idolmaster you create a unit of 3 characters, one of which is the leader, and the leader has their own unique story, like their own special route. And there are 10 characters in the game, 2 of which were twins. And the twins are like basically the same character as far as the game is concerned. Like you have to produce them together. They count as one character.
Oh, okay.
So like there's actually 9 different routes in the game. And one of the key talking points was that after you do an audition to perform a song on TV, the characters will actually sing and dance that song, and you can watch them do it, and you can dress them up in different outfits. And each of the 9 characters have unique vocals recorded for every single song in the game. And some of the earliest memes in this series came from the unique way that each character performs their songs. For example, when Chihaya sings Ohayo Asagohan, she sings it in a very staccato way, which sounds like very robotic. And so people started calling her Mecha Chihaya and dressing her up in robot accessories. And that's still a kind of a meme to this day. Mm-hmm. In 2007, the Idolmaster got a port for the Xbox 360 with a new character named Miki. And in 2008, there was Live for You, Idolmaster Live for You, which was like a rhythm spin-off. And that game was pretty important because it added a mode which became known as Stage for You, which basically just allows you to just have the characters sing and dance their songs on stage, separate from the main producing mode. And people would like make videos of their characters singing and post them on Nico Nico Doga, and that sort of helped the franchise become a lot more popular.
That's
because
probably
sorry, go ahead.
That's probably the aspect that I'm most familiar with regarding the iDOLM STER series.
Yeah, for a lot of people, that's how they discovered it.
Yeah.
Because like I think most people weren't going to take their chance on some racing sim in the arcades, but because of Nico Nico Doga, and that was like the early days of Nico Nico when a lot of people were on there and making things.
Yeah.
And iDOLM STER became one of the most popular like sources of material, along with like Toho and Vocaloid. In 2009, the iDOLM STER SP released for the PSP, and this was sort of like an updated version of iDOLM STER 1. It recycles a lot of content, although it also strips some things down for the sake of putting it on a handheld console. It has a new story with a rival idol agency and 2 new rival characters named Takane and Hibiki. These characters were originally planned for the arcade iDOLM STER, and in some early promotional material, you could see Takane and Hibiki for arcade, but they got cut, and then eventually in SP they were added. And after SP, they sort of joined the rest of the characters as part of the main cast. And also in 2009, there was another spin-off for the DS called Dearly Stars. And this was more of like a story-focused game with 3 original characters who haven't appeared on any other iDOLM STER games since then, except for Ryo, because Ryo is a male idol who in Dearly Stars he works as a female idol, but now he's in Side M, which is like the branch of iDOLM STER that just has male characters. But the other 2 are basically lost at this point. So the next game in this series was iDOLM STER 2. And it was first announced at the series' 5th anniversary concert in July of 2010. And it was to be the first second vision game. And the second vision was basically I guess you could say like a reboot of the series. All the characters got a year older than the original, and some had small changes to their character design, like new hairstyles. And at the 5th anniversary concert, which was a phenomenal show, I should say, you can watch the concert Blu-ray, and near the end they showed the trailer for the new game. Everybody was really excited, and then Tokyo Game Show rolls around in September, a couple months later, and on the 18th of September at Tokyo Game Show they had a presentation for the game, and this famously became known as the 9/18 incident, the September 18th incident, because it was very controversial. So at this presentation they announced that 4 characters would not be producible in the game, that being Iori, Azusa, Ami, and Ritsuko. And these 4 characters would instead be a rival unit called Ryugu Komachi. And in this story, you basically have a friendly rivalry with Ryugu Komachi, and you sort of compete against them in a couple points in the story. And they also announced a new rival unit called Jupiter, which would feature male idols. And so a lot of people were pissed off because 4 characters who people really liked would not be playable, and 2, because there are now male characters in their gal game.
Well, the first aspect really I can understand somewhat. It
Yeah.
really sounds like a hard blow to the fans of these characters, especially if they were playable in the previous games.
And
So,
I
yeah.
think it really wasn't communicated well
Mhm.
from the developers what this meant for the future of the franchise, because this was going to be the first second Vision game where the characters have gotten redesigns and it's sort of a reboot. A lot of people were probably wondering if this meant that those 4 characters are never going to be producible again,
Mhm.
which wasn't the case. But the producer of the series really didn't communicate things well, and so a lot of people were very unhappy. And uh, the developers probably thought that 9 routes in the game, well, there's 13 characters total, 4 of them were removed. They probably thought 9 routes was fine because the original arcade game had 9 routes. The Xbox 360 version had 10. iDOLM STER SP had 9. They probably thought that was a reasonable amount of content, but like obviously taking away characters that people have become so attached to, especially in a series where the focus is on communicating with them and forming a personal bond, people were pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
That being said, I think the gameplay in Idolmaster 2 was extremely solid, and it's a game that really expanded the strategic complexity compared to Idolmaster 1, and it integrates all of its various mechanics extremely well in such a way that every action that you do has consequences in multiple areas. And so when you're deciding what to do in terms of like time management and how to build your characters, there's a lot of different factors to take into account, and all of that sort of melts together both in terms of the strategy and also servicing the narrative as well and the themes of the story. And it also walks a very perfect balance between strategic gameplay and casual appeal. I think it'll appeal to both players who want a strategy game that they can really sink their teeth into, and also casual players who just want to play for the characters and the music. It manages to balance both of that well, and I'll sort of get into that more. I just need a sip of water.
Yeah, for sure.
So originally, Idolmaster 2 came out for the Xbox 360 exclusively on February 24th, 2011. It only had 15 songs in the base game, which was fewer than previous games in the series. Another thing that people were kind of pissed off about. Ryugu obviously was not playable, but you can use them in the stage for you mode, where you just have them like sing and dance on stage. Eventually, in October of 2011, there was a PS3 port, which basically tried to address some of the complaints people had about the original by adding more songs, more outfits, and an extra episode where you could produce the Ryugu Komachi members. And in the extra episode, you basically just have communication events with those characters for a few weeks and do some festival battles. It's not like as meaty as the main produce mode, but like it's something. So if you're a fan of those characters, you at least get some content. And they also added a hard mode in the PS3 version. So if you're playing this for the first time, it's recommended to get the PS3 version. And it's also more import friendly because PS3 version is region free, whereas for the Xbox version, you need to have a Japanese Xbox 360. So the basic structure of Idolmaster 2 is that you work as an idol producer, and you choose 3 characters to make a unit from the 9 that are available, one of whom you select as the leader, who gets their own unique storyline. And there's also simultaneously a main storyline that's shared by all 9 characters. And that basically focuses on the friendly rivalry with Ryuko Komachi and a less friendly rivalry with Jupiter, the group of male idols. The game takes place over a 1-year period, which is divided into weeks. And at the end of the year, there's an award show which basically measures your success over the course of the year based on how many fans you've accumulated for your unit and your CD sales. So you increase your fans by doing jobs each week, such as promotional activities, which can be things like making a commercial or doing a tie-up with some sort of product, or like doing fire chief for a day, or just any sort of promotional activity that raises people's awareness of your group. You can also do TV auditions, where if you pass the audition, you can broadcast on TV, live concerts and festivals. You can also do lessons to raise your stats, where you do like a dance lesson to get them better at dancing, or vocal lessons. And you can also take some time off to do shopping and buy more outfits and accessories, or just give the characters a week off. Because as you do more work, your characters will accumulate stress, and if they get too stressed, then they just won't show up to work. So by giving them a week off or letting them go shopping, it helps to de-stress them. Promotional activities are the game's main source of communication events. So whenever you're doing a promotion, you select a character that you want to focus on, and that character will confide in you about some trouble that they're having. Like they'll be going on a radio show, and they'll ask you for advice about how to introduce themselves. Or they'll be doing some filming in front of a green screen, and they're concerned about how to act naturally in front of a green screen, and they'll ask you for advice about that. And you'll get different dialogue options, and based on which options you pick, you'll be rated. Your communication will be rated, and then the better you communicate with them, the more you'll increase your memory appeals. So memory appeals are something that I'll dive into later when I get more into the stage scoring mechanics. And again, this is kind of how the various systems in the game are integrated a lot. But basically, you want to get more memory appeals for the time that you get on stage, and also communicating properly helps basically improve that idol's mental state, and that's important for other mechanics. I'll get to it some more later.
Yeah, it does sound like the simulation aspects and the character communication aspects are pretty involved.
So each activity that you select for 1 week has a different time consumption. So basically, lessons are fairly short, whereas promotions are a little bit longer, and stage performances are the longest. If you want to hold a concert, it takes up the whole week. And different activities give different amounts of fans, money, and increase to attention rate. And attention rate is basically whether people are paying attention to your unit. There's each activity that you do has a geographic location for it, and the map of Japan is divided into 6 different regions. Each of those 6 regions has their own separate fan count and attention rate. So when you're deciding what to do, you need to take into account which area of Japan you want to focus on. And if you fail to go to a particular area for too long, then the attention rate there is going to go down. And if the attention rate goes down, then you start losing fans in that region. So a big part of the game is like paying attention to the attention rates and sort of juggling all 6 different regions and taking jobs that are going to keep your attention rate up and keep your fans up in each region. And there's different strategies for how you want to approach that over the long term in the course of the game. Personally, I tend to focus on like 2 different regions at the start, and then I slowly work my way up to 3, 4, 5, 6, because I feel like juggling 6 regions from the start of the game is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But if you work your way up, it's not so bad. There are cross-country television broadcasts that you can do through like TV auditions, and if you succeed in those, you'll be able to get fans and attention rate across the entirety of Japan. But it's important to note that each activity is actually a separate instance in the game. They're not just like random missions that you can do over and over. If you use up all of your cross-country TV auditions, then they're gone. So you can't just spam them constantly and hope and expect that like you can juggle the game that way, because you'll run out, and then it's very, very difficult to keep your fans up if you lose them all. And at the end of the year, there's different awards, like I said, at the award ceremony, and there are awards that you get based on your success within each region of the game. And to get the best ending, you have to be successful in like every single region, as well as have enough CD sales and total fans.
And does the hard difficulty change a lot to this? Like the strategy or something?
It changes the difficulty of all the stage performances. So you're expected to get higher score to like pass a TV audition or be successful in a concert or to beat a festival opponent. And it also makes the charts, the sales charts, a lot more competitive. And that's really where the difficulty comes from, is the charts being so much more difficult.
I see.
But I'm not really at the charts yet. I'll get into that once I get to CD sales and how that works, because that's a really crucial part of iDOLM Master 2. And that's where everything really comes together. So stage performances, in order to pass or like be successful in a concert or a TV audition or a festival, you have to perform a song, and there's basically a simple rhythm mini game that you play during the performance. As a rhythm game, it's extremely simple. It's just basically pressing buttons to the beat of the song at a constant pace. And you have 3 buttons on screen, which are mapped to the square, triangle, and circle, or the equivalent of that on Xbox. And each of those buttons is associated with a particular stat, either dance, visual, or vocal. And depending on your unit's dance stat or their visual stat, then when you press that button to the beat of the music, then you'll get a score. So if you do a lot of dance lessons and specialize in dance, then you think, I should do a lot of dance appeals. Press the dance button a lot, get a lot of score. But to prevent you from doing that, there's a multiplier associated with each of the 3 appeals. And each time you press a button to do an appeal, it lowers the multiplier for that appeal. So you keep pressing the dance button, your score is going to go down and down and down. At the same time, it increases the multiplier for the adjacent appeal. So you keep hitting dance, it goes down, whereas the visual goes up. So in that sense, you kind of are forced to mix it up and sort of manage your multipliers. Although the multiplier decay is the amount the multiplier decreases is greater than the amount it increases the next one. So it just keeps going down and down and down unless you do special appeals. And your special appeals, one of them is the memory appeals that I mentioned earlier, which you increase by doing communication events and getting better communication with the characters. And the game basically treats this as like your characters are like drawing energy from their good memories that they formed with each other and you. But effectively, a memory appeal, as far as the scoring is concerned, it's treated as a simultaneous appeal in the dance, visual, and vocal, and it resets the multiplier for all three of them to 1.1 after the appeal has been done. So because the multipliers keep going down and degenerating, this is how you sort of bring it back up, or one of the ways that you bring it back up. And each time you do any appeal, it increases the voltage gauge. And the voltage gauge is basically a bar in the top left of the screen that keeps filling up each time you press the buttons. And a memory appeal will increase the voltage gauge by a whole bunch more than a regular appeal. And when the voltage gauge is full, you can do a burst appeal. And the burst appeal is a special series of appeals which is unique to each character. So rather than being able to freely choose between dance, visual, and vocal, it'll give you like visual, vocal, dance, etc. And you have to press the right one. The actual appeals that you get are different for each character, and it's based on their individual specialties. For example, Chihaya is known for being a very good vocalist, so her burst appeal has a lot of vocal appeals, whereas Hibiki has a lot of dance appeals in her burst. And when you do a burst appeal, it doubles the current multiplier for all three of the appeals. So part of the strategy in scoring is sort of setting up your multipliers prior to doing a burst appeal, so that when you do the burst, let's say you have Chihaya in your unit, you want to set up the vocal to have a high multiplier before she does her burst appeal, because then she's going to get a lot of score out of the burst appeal. And another unique aspect of burst appeals is that they don't calculate the score using your dance, visual, and vocal stats. They actually use a fourth hidden stat called Donketsu. And Donketsu basically translates to unity. And unity is like a core theme of the Idolmaster 2. And this stat is it's raised in a variety of different ways, but the main source of Donketsu comes from a natural increase that occurs each week based on your unit status. And your unit status is sort of like a measure of how your unit is doing, like in terms of their mental state. There's about a dozen different statuses that your unit can be in, which change based on how well you've been communicating with each idol, and like which idols you've been communicating with, and how successful you've been at jobs lately, and what stats you've been focusing on building. For example, you can get in a fighting status where two of the girls get in a fight with each other and the third one feels like she's caught in the middle. Or there's a show-off status where one of the girls is very enthusiastic, whereas the other girls are annoyed at her. Or there's a dancing status where the unit is really into dancing, and that'll boost the effect of dance lessons. And there's other statuses like burned out, when you've been doing too many jobs and they're getting too stressed and burnt out from work, or normal, enthusiastic, and so on. So a big part of the game is like paying attention to your unit status and adjusting which characters you choose to communicate with and how you communicate with them in order to keep your unit status in a good state. because the better your unit status, the more passive Donketsu you get each week. And that long-term Donketsu gain is really important for the late game scoring, because in the early to mid game you get a lot of your score mainly from like your dance, visual, and vocal stats. But later, as that Donketsu keeps increasing, it becomes the main source of score in the late game. So, yeah.
Goes pretty
Other ways
deep.
Well, like the really interesting thing about the game is how all the different aspects come together in various ways. You also get Donketsu from succeeding at various mini games that are thrown throughout the game, like doing a cheer before a stage performance. And there are bonuses from getting fan mail, and fan mail has different conditions, like reaching a threshold number of fans in a region, or releasing a new CD, or things like that. So there's a lot of like juggling your short-term and long-term goals in order to make sure that your Donketsu is better for the late game. So that's basically how scoring works in a stage performance. Festivals are important to note because they're not simply playing for score. You're put up against an opponent in a festival. Sorry. You're put up against an opponent, and whoever gets the higher score between you and your opponent wins the festival. But it's unique because whenever you do a memory appeal, it not only increases your voltage gauge, but it decreases the opponent's voltage gauge. And when you do a burst appeal, it decreases their voltage gauge by a large amount, and your opponent is prevented from doing any appeals during your burst. So you can sort of strategize against preventing your opponent from using their burst appeals. And that way you can sort of beat a stronger unit in a festival through strategically doing that. The way that you build your unit and customize them comes from primarily increasing their stats through lessons to give them specialization. So you might want to specialize in dance or visual or whatever based on your individual character strengths and their strengths from their burst appeals, like the way that their burst appeals are spread out between dance, visual, and vocal, so that you can take advantage of those multipliers. You need to get more memory appeals by doing promotional activities and communicating well with the characters. And you can also get stat bonuses through outfits and accessories, which you can buy when you go shopping. And finally, you can get amulets to equip on the characters. And these don't actually give stat bonuses, but they have unique effects, which can include things like increasing score from certain types of appeals, or increasing the rate that the voltage gauge fills up, or decreasing the rate of multiplier decay, like how much the multiplier decreases each time you appeal, or shielding your voltage gauge from the opponent in a festival battle. Each amulet can be bought in a different prefecture of Japan after succeeding in a stage performance there, and different ones will be useful depending on how you've customized your unit and which type of performance you're doing. Like some of them are better for festival battles, others are better for scoring in like live concerts and so on. So score in stage performance is not only important for simply succeeding at that performance and earning money and fans, but also because it factors into CD sales. And CD sales are sort of the core measure of how well you've been strategizing in iDOLM Master 2. You have up to 5 opportunities to release a CD over the course of the game, with the song chosen by you. After you decide the song, there's a 4-week promotional period before the CD comes out, and during this time you should do performances like auditions and concerts to perform the song and promote it. The CD sales are based on your high score during that promotional period, as well as your number of fans that you have and the current attention rate in each respective region where those fans are located. Each week after the CD comes out, the sales will decrease a little bit until after about 4 weeks you basically stop getting CD sales unless you trigger special sales states. This is like a somewhat more advanced mechanic, but basically by doing certain types of performances, like an audition or a festival or a live, each of them has an associated special sales state that can be triggered. It's ultimately random, but you can improve the odds by performing the favorite song of a character in your unit. Each of them has a song that they like more than the others, and it's easier to get special sales states by using that song and by wearing a matching set of accessories. So the reason you want CD sales is because it places your song higher on the charts, and a higher chart position unlocks more difficult jobs with better rewards. So after you enter the top 50, you suddenly have better jobs available where you'll make more money, you'll get more fans. And the sales and chart position also affect whether you're going to win an important award at the end of the year at the award show, and that affects what ending you're going to get. So CD sales are really where everything comes together. And the game keeps track of your high score in terms of like the max CD sales that you've gotten in a playthrough. So that's something that you can look at and try to improve on repeat playthroughs. Okay, I've almost covered everything.
Yeah.
One more important thing to mention is the existence of reporters, and there's different reporters who randomly move around between the different regions of Japan. And if you do a stage performance in a region that a reporter is currently in, then they may approach you and offer to report on your unit for a few weeks. And each reporter gives different effects for your unit, such as bonuses to the amount of fans that you get, or the amount of money that you get, or increasing the rate that the voltage gauge increases, or making lessons increase your stats more. So it can be good to seek out a reporter based on your short-term goals. Like if you need to improve your stats quickly, then you should get that reporter. Or if there's a difficult festival battle you want to take on, there's a
The
reporter
game
who
tells
helps.
you. Does the game tell you where a reporter is at the moment?
Yeah,
Before you
on the like scheduling screen, you can see all the jobs that are available in each region, and like at the corner of the screen, it'll say if there's a reporter there and which reporter is there. So yeah, that's how you tell. It's ultimately a little bit random though. It seems to be like a 50-50 chance if you actually pick up the reporter. But you can either reset or just move on. If you unintentionally pick up a reporter, just like while you're doing other stuff, it can be a good idea to alter your plans for the next few weeks to take advantage of them, because getting them is a little bit random. It's good to change your plans based on that. So lots of short and long-term goals to juggle, and every decision and action that you make is important due to how integrated the various systems are with each other and how everything ultimately affects how you're going to grow as a unit and get CD sales. So with all that, you may be wondering where the casual appeal comes in, because like there is a lot of strategic appeal, but also I think a lot of casual appeal, and a lot of it just comes from the song performances. Each time after you do like a stage performance, you get to watch the characters sing and dance that song, and they have unique vocals for every single character in the game, and they'll wear the outfits and accessories that you've equipped them with. And there's even the stage for you mode separate from the producing mode, where you can just freely dress up the characters and watch performances. The music is really, really good, especially songs like Smoky Thrill, Kirameki Raji, Mega Aotoki, Dodai, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
There's 20 songs in the PS3 version, 15 on the 360. And you can spend hours just trying different groups of characters and sort of finding your own personal, creating your own personal version of that song with different characters.
Mm-hmm.
Also, since so much of the game is communication, you can enjoy just talking to the characters, and there's like dozens of communication events for each character, so many that you can't possibly see them all for even one character in one playthrough. So you're looking at multiple playthroughs to experience all of the story and dialogue.
Yeah, I suppose character interaction does play a big part in the casual attraction to the game.
Mm-hmm.
Although personally, after all this you've been talking about, I'm really interested in how engrossing the simulation aspect, the sales and the festivals.
Yeah. I feel like with the communication, even choosing the wrong options sometimes leads to amusing situations. So if you don't mind not getting perfect communication and you're just playing for fun,
yeah,
it's great to like pick joke options and see how that pans out over the communication. The dialogue is mostly fairly simple. It's like N3 level Japanese. So if you're someone who's learning the language, learning Japanese, it's really good for practicing your reading and listening skills. It really forces you to pay attention to what the character is asking of you, and sort of measuring your response based on that. Whether you want to play the game casually or for the strategy is up to you, and I think there's a lot of replay value on both sides, both trying to improve your CD sales and how many fans you're able to accumulate and how high you're able to chart on the song charts, and also just using different characters for their communication and their unique story, and using different songs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the biggest flaw that I see in the game is that not all of the characters' unique story are equal, I feel. The unique routes sort of give a closer look at the idol that you've chosen to be leader, and it adds depth to their backstory and their personal life and their goals and reasons that they became an idol. They can be very different in tone and content. For example, Makoto's story is very cute and funny because in her story she's training. She asks you to help her train to become more cute and feminine, even though she's like a natural tomboy. Like she uses boku as her personal pronoun.
Yeah.
Chihaya is much more dramatic, and it focuses on her tragic backstory and the psychological effects that's had on her. Takane's story is more like a mystery. In her story, it's revealed that she's been secretly meeting with a record executive behind your back, and sort of you investigate the reasons why that is and so on. My favorite story was Yukiho, which is about her journey to overcome her anxieties and gain self-confidence, because she's a very anxious person, and sort of the way that happens is Yukiho likes writing poetry, and so you ask her to try writing lyrics for a song, and through that you sort of get to know her better and and see the things that she's struggling with internally. And it's a really beautiful story. And if you get her true ending, it's a really great ending. So I actually recommend players not pick Yukiho on your first playthrough, because her true ending is so good that you should wait until you're better at the game and you can you can be confident that you'll get her true ending.
Yeah.
Whereas like with the other characters, it doesn't really matter so much if you don't get their true end. But some other characters, their stories are like not very memorable. For instance, Yayoi. Yayoi is a character who I like, and her story focuses on how she comes from a poor family, and she's the oldest sibling, and her parents work a lot, so she's the one at home taking care of her siblings most of the time, and sort of juggling her family life and her work life puts a lot of stress on her, and it sort of delves into how that affects her, which is like it's a good topic for her story, but there's not actually much going on in terms of like memorable events. So I feel like there could have been more effort put into her story and some of the other characters to sort of flesh it out some more. So for me, I feel like half the stories are just phoned in, and the other half are actually good. But as like a strategy game or casual game for the music, it's fantastic. And yeah, I think that covers everything.
Yeah.
Sorry if I've been going on a long tirade.
No problem. I'm really interested in playing it. Personally, I like to start Frankenstein from the start, but it feels like playing the first game is a bit difficult to get around to. So I probably will jump onto iDOLM STER 2 at some point in the future, in the near future, hopefully. So yeah, I'm really interested in both aspects, both simulation and the casual aspect, and the characters themselves. So yeah.
It was the first iDOLM STER game that I played, and I thought it was fine as an introduction.
Yeah.
The first one, your choices are either arcade or owning a Japanese 360, both of which are you basically have to travel to Japan unless you want to pay a lot to import. So yeah. For people without Japanese knowledge, I feel like you'll probably miss out on a lot of the game because so much of it is communication. But you can still enjoy the music and playing in stage for you mode, because in stage for you, you can just like you don't have to read Japanese. You just like watch performances.
And it's available from the start, this stage for you mode?
Yeah. It's available. The only thing you're missing is like outfits and accessories that you unlock in the main produce mode. But a lot of people imported this game when it first came out and enjoyed it just for stage for you. And there's also there's a very good English language guide that you can find online. If you just search like iDOLM STER 2 English guide, you'll find it, and it explains the strategy and helps you with the communication events if you can't read Japanese. So it is very manageable if you're interested in for that. But also, like I said, it's very good for language practice and practicing your reading and listening comprehension. And that is about it.
Yep. Well.
So if you're someone who played iDOLM STER 2 back in the day, or perhaps dismissed it based on some of those criticisms about not being able to play the Ryugu Komachi characters or and so on, I hope people will give it another chance.
Yeah.
Because I really love this game, and I think it's due for a critical reevaluation, as well as some fresh perspective from new players. Okay. Anything else to add, or should we call it a day?
I think that's it for this episode. So I'm really interested in this game, but there's not much to add from me personally.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and
thanks everyone for listening, and maybe next episode I will talk about my impressions on Final Fantasy VII.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
See ya.
See you around.